I'm messing with my lighting a little bit today. I hope it doesn't look too German expressionism.
Looks great.
Okay, trying to just. Okay, we're letting everybody file into the virtual theater, or kitchen rather, for this. So give us just a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Hi, Benjamin from Germany, and Terrence and Leslie, welcome. Okay, just another minute or two and then we'll get going. Krista, hello. Okay, I think we've got enough people filed into the virtual kitchen, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Hollywood Kitchen. And we are kicking off what is going to be the first of 4 Hollywood Kitchen Christmas themed episodes, because 2020 has been a tough year for all of us. And I think the saying, we need a little Christmas right this very minute, certainly applies. And I think we need the boys now more than ever before. This is my Laurel and Hardy Christmas ornament that I took from my tree to put in here for this. And they are the stars of the month on Turner Classic Movies for December of 2020. There's a new DVD set from Flicker Alley that features both Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel's work before they teamed up. And I can't think of a better and more joyful way to kick off the Christmas season than Laurel and Hardy and my special guest today, Laurel and Hardy expert, Rick Greene. So Rick, tell everybody about yourself and your work.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm pretty excited to be here and to talk about the lives and careers of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, and about the Sons of the Desert, which is the international Laurel and Hardy organization, of which I've been a member since 1973. I was 15 years old and read about the Sons of the Desert in there were hardly any books out on Laurel and Hardy back then, but one of them, I believe it was The Comedy World of Stan Laurel by John McCabe, the man who founded Sons of the Desert, mentioned the existence of Sons of the Desert. So I wrote to them in New York. I wanted to join the Cleveland, Ohio tent. That's what we call the chapters. And there wasn't one. So at 15 years old, I founded the Big Business Tent of Cleveland, Ohio, and was the grand sheik of that tent for its first 5 years of existence. Then I moved to the West Coast to finish college and joined the Saps at Sea tent of San Diego, and within a few years became the grand sheik of that tent, ran that group for 12 or 15 years, and this is kind of a little news flash here for any of our viewers that are in the Sons of the Desert. The second tent ever to be founded is the Way Out West tent of Los Angeles, the tent of the stars. And I've been a member of that tent since 1978. And starting next year, next month, really, the current Grand Sheik, Jimmy Wiley, will be retiring, and I will be the incoming Grand Sheik elect, if you will, of the Way Out West tent of Los Angeles for, the next few years or however long they need me. So I think the first person to be the Grand Sheik of 3 different major Sons of the Desert tents, which I've been involved with most of my child and adult life. But in addition to Grand Sheiking, I'm a massive Laurel and Hardy collector. You can see a few original one sheets behind me that I'll talk about, and I have some lobby cards and vintage stills to hold up as the conversation unfolds. I was also the editor of the international newsletter for Sons of the Desert called the Intratent Journal. This is one of my issues from the 80s. I was the editor of the ITJ for almost 10 years through most of the 1980s. So I guess, and the most recent thing, which we'll talk about as well, is I co-wrote a book on Henry Brandon called King of the Bogeymen, and there's Henry. He played Barnaby in Laurel and Hardy's classic Babes in Toyland, which since Thanksgiving and all this month will be run and run and run all over the world. So my friend Bill Cassera and I wrote this career retrospective of Henry Brandon, and that's my most recent Laurel and Hardy related achievement. That was a long-winded
No, it's great. It's great. It's great to hear about your work. And as a Valentino devotee and Lady in Black, hearing that you're the Grand Sheik of tents is really, that's so awesome. I absolutely love that. We always start off the show with talking about how you first discovered Laurel and Hardy. What was your introduction to them and to their work?
Well, I guess it would go back to junior high school before I founded the Big Business tent. When I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio in the 60s, they weren't running Laurel and Hardy at that time. I grew up to the Three Stooges and the Little Rascals, the Our Gang Shorts, and of course Abbott and Costello. So I didn't see a lot of Laurel and Hardy, but I made a pal in junior high school who changed my life. He introduced me to Ian Fleming and the James Bond movies, Sean Connery, the original ones. He introduced me to Famous Monsters of Filmland, and I started collecting that magazine from Forrest J. Ackerman. And that led to, staying up late and watching the late night horror movie hosts of Cleveland, which led to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, Meet the Mummy, Meet Jekyll and Hyde, which led to film collecting, buying Castle films of Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And my friend Carrie discovered Black Hawk Films around 1972 or so, 71. And we both bought the Black Hawk Films sampler reel. It was like $3, and it had clips from Hunchback of Notre Dame and Chaplin and a Laurel and Hardy clip. So we started collecting 8mm comedies, Chaplin films, Keaton films, and the Laurel and Hardy silent shorts. And I was immediately in love with the characters, the relationship of Laurel and Hardy. And as I saw more and more of their films, especially the ones from the late 20s and the entire 1930s, I was struck by the friendship, the genuine feelings of warmth, love, really, between these two childlike characters. They fought, they hit each other, but boy, they stuck up for each other and they also protected each other. So that was different from Martin and Lewis and Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers and all the other greats. You laugh at them, but the feeling of affection was palpable, and it really drew me into that world. The music that's kind of going in the background, hopefully the viewers can hear it, it is that Hal Roach background music that was in the Our Gang shorts, the Charlie Chase shorts, the Laurel and Hardy shorts. It created this universe that was quite unique. It was cartoonish, it was hilarious, and it was filled with the same stock company of actors in all those series. You could see James Finlayson in Charlie Chase and Our Gang films and so on. So, boy, I guess I don't have any short answers.
That's okay. That's great, actually. Yeah, I don't remember never not knowing who they were as a kid. Like, I can't remember the first time I saw them, but I don't remember a time when I wasn't aware of them. And then when I moved to Los Angeles 20 years ago, was the first time I got to see them on a big screen. And I'm always such an advocate of big screen viewing because it's a whole different ball game when you see them on that level. And I go to the San Francisco Silent Film Festival every year. I've been doing that for like 20 years. And I've gotten to see a lot of them up there. And it's just so thrilling to see them in a huge 20s movie palace with live music, beautiful prints, and just to see that comedy and share that laughter with a huge audience. To me, that is just one of the greatest joys in life. And I think probably one of my favorite Laurel and Hardy ones is Wrong Again. Just something about
Yes.
like, it just cracks me up. It's just such a surreal, ridiculous, and absolutely hilarious film. And I've read, actually, they shot that whole film too, actually out of sequence, like shot it like into beginning. So it's kind of funny if that's totally correct, that this film about everything being in reverse was actually shot in reverse.
Stan was the creative genius behind their films, and he tried to shoot in sequence to maintain the storyline and keep their heads in the right place. But that's, of course, not always possible. So in some cases, you are correct. They would have to shoot out of sequence. But boy, did you ever kind of nail it on the head a moment ago when you talked about being able to see these films on the big screen with a big audience. Most of them are on DVD, home video. You could sit in your living room and watch it and enjoy it and laugh by yourself. But that's why the Sons of the Desert continues to thrive 60 years later. There's something so special about being in a room full of 80, 100, 120 people that love what you love. And we've all seen the films before. It doesn't matter. We are roaring with laughter. It's contagious, and it's a very special evening, as you noted with San Francisco, to communally share that with like-minded people.
I cherish those moments. Absolutely.
Yes.
So we're going to get into the recipe. It's not going to take long because it's a pretty simple one. I've been really lucky. There is one cookbook that had for a long time eluded me called What Actors Eat When They Eat. It's pretty rare. It was published, I think, in the late 30s. And I'd always wanted a copy, and I had to settle for finding one online because the real life copies are hundreds of dollars, very expensive. Well, this lady who follows me named Marnie Rafter, a major shout out to Marnie Rafter, and also Daryl Rooney, who helped me here. They got me this book. Marnie gave me her copy of this book. And I've been so excited to have an original copy of What Actors Eat When They Eat. And there's a recipe by Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel in the book. So we are working out of the original cookbook today. Now the recipe that we're gonna make is Oliver Hardy's baked apples with honey and almonds. It's very simple, not gonna take us long, which gives us time to talk, which is important. Now there is a Stan Laurel recipe, and I'm gonna get the question, why didn't you make both? I asked myself that question as well. But when I read Stan Laurel's recipe, I quickly understood why this would not be happening. So I shall briefly synopsize this recipe for you. It is the ham ring mold. I will post pictures of this, by the way, later, so if you want to zoom in on it, you can. But it involves tomato soup, cream cheese, Jell-O, salad dressing, ham, eggs, and olives in a Jell-O mold. I did not have the courage to go down that road right now.
Anything with mold we want to avoid.
Yeah, I just thought, you know what, that's another topic for another day. Not that we don't love Stan, but Oliver Hardy's recipe is a heck of a lot more doable and frankly edible. So that's the road we're going to go down right now. And it is found on page 114 of this fabulous book. Now, I don't want to get anything on it, so I'm going to kind of set it under this plastic cookbook holder that I got right here. I would totally be upset if I spilled water all over this thing or something. Okay, so you preheat the oven to 375 degrees. It's going to bake for 1 hour. The idea is that you take an apple and you core it, which no one told me coring an apple was this difficult. I got one of those core gadgets. It got stuck. I had a terrible time pulling it out, made a huge mess. It was sort of a Laurel and Hardy experience on my own here. So we cored the apple. Now it says we need, the other ingredients we need are aromatic bitters. I could not find those, but a friend of mine told me if I grated up some citrus peel, that would do. We have some almonds and butter and honey. I'm also going to add a little cinnamon and nutmeg in here as well. So it's pretty simple, actually. Oliver Hardy says to mix 1 tablespoon of the aromatic bitters with 4 tablespoons of honey. So we've got a greased pan right here. We're going to mix the aromatic bitters or the lemon peel. Okay, roughly 4 tablespoons of honey. I'm kind of guessing here because I can't find my measuring thing. Okay, let's see. Add a spoon of blanched and chopped walnuts to the apple. Okay, we're gonna add some walnuts. This is so simple. I love it when things are simple. Okay, dot with butter. A little bit of butter here and there. Okay, and then bake. Let's see, pour 1/2 cup of water in. Okay, this is important so it doesn't burn. So I've got 1/2 cup of water. We're going to add here. And then we put it in the oven for 375 for 1 hour. This is what it looks like right now. Pretty simple, really. And I made this in advance last night. This is what the final product looks like.
Ooh.
Yeah, and you're actually encouraged to add whipped cream or milk to it at the end of the day here when it's out of the oven. So the recipe is pretty much now done. And again, it's so simple. I will post it on the page again. And also I'm working on a Hollywood Kitchen blog. So that is coming out soon as well. Oh, I forgot to add the nutmeg and cinnamon. I'll do that really quickly. It's too bad you're far away in San Diego because when I made Jean Harlow's hot rolls, I had Harlow historian Daryl Rooney, and he only lives 15 minutes away from me. So I actually hand delivered all the hot rolls to his doorstep when the episode was over.
Well, I'm actually in Santa Clarita. You can bring it over afterwards.
I'll see if I can swing that. All right. All righty. So that was pretty simple. And after the episode, I will taste it, and I will definitely be reporting back on the blog when it comes out about how it tasted. But it seems pretty safe. I mean, all those ingredients seem like they will go well together, and it will make sense, which is good. So, recipe having been put to rest, let's talk all about the boys.
Well, Oliver Hardy was quite the gourmet cook. So I'm sure it's going to taste absolutely delicious. And in fact, it's kind of a food-related incident that created the Laurel and Hardy team to begin with. Um, in the mid 1920s, both Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy were working at the Hal Roach Studios. Stan, at this point, was behind the camera, writing and directing, and he had directed Babe Hardy in several films. And the Sunday before shooting began on a new film, Babe was at home cooking a leg of lamb, and he burned his arm very badly while basting this leg of lamb in the oven, and couldn't report for shooting the next morning. Had to there were like second-degree burns. So Mr. Roach convinced Stan, it probably didn't take much convincing, to step back in front of the camera and to take the role that Oliver Hardy was to play in this silent short. And then a few days later, Babe returns, his arm's fine, and the two of them, as part of the Hal Roach All-Star Players, the stock company, found themselves appearing in films together. And director Leo McCarey, who would later do Going My Way with Bing Crosby, noticed the visual dynamic of the thin one with the heavier one, and they seemed to play well off each other. So he teamed them in several films, and it just blossomed from there. Mr. Roach, who was actually on an overseas trip during the first few, came back, loved what he saw, wholeheartedly endorsed this new team going forward. And the two of them, Roach and McCarey, worked with Stan Laurel to create this Laurel and Hardy silent two-reeler team. And then a couple of years later, they very successfully made the transition to sound shorts.
Excellent. Excellent. Out of all their silent films, which one is your favorite in the silent era?
Well, because I named my Cleveland tent the Big Business Tent, that's obvious. It's big business. I think that two-reeler where they're selling Christmas trees in California is one of the greatest silent comedies ever made. And I rank it up there with the Chaplin features, the Gold Rush, Keaton, the Lloyd films. That Laurel and Hardy two-reeler, they made no features in the silent days, is as great as any of the great comedians' masterpieces.
Let me ask you this. Were you at the Laurel and Hardy convention or bus tour in about 2009 here in Los Angeles?
Yes, there were two major Sons of the Desert conventions in Los Angeles. The first one was 1980, called Hollywood 80, and the second one was called Laurel and Hardywood, and that was in 2014. I think it was six or so years ago, and I was one of the bus tour guides. There were, I think, 4 buses, maybe even 5 buses. We had hundreds of people driving around, seeing the filming locations, and that Big Business House was among them.
Well, my memory of this, and I hope I'm getting this right in my head, is I was on one of the buses, and we pulled up in front of the Big Business House, and we all jumped out of the bus and went on the lawn, and they had a Laurel and Hardy impersonator on the lawn. And then the front door flies open, and this lady comes out in her bathrobe, and she's looking around like she just can't believe it's Saturday morning, and there's like hundreds.
What are you people doing on my lawn? Yeah, we try to maintain a connection with the folks that own the Big Business House, the Perfect Day House. There are a few others, so they know, when events happen and people show up, they get the reason. But sometimes they sell and we don't know who the new buyer is. So obviously that lady was probably a more recent owner and we hadn't had time to give her the heads up.
But it was such a perfect Laurel and Hardy moment of this confused woman in her bathrobe having absolutely no idea on earth why there's hundreds of people and a Laurel and Hardy on her lawn at like 9 in the morning on Saturday. It was like so perfect. You couldn't have scripted it better. And I remember just laughing, thinking that was just absolutely hilarious.
Very funny, although the most popular location other than the grave sites, oh, and I'll tell you a story about that in a moment, is the Music Box Stairs. In 1932, they made a three-reeler called the Music Box, and it won the very first Academy Award for Best Short Subject, 1932-33 ceremony. And those steps, which are still there, they're on Vendome Avenue,
I've been
are
there.
wildly popular. Yeah, you have to walk up and down just to say you did it, but it does make you winded. So that reminds me of kind of a crazy story. A writer for the LA Times was doing an article on the grave sites of the famous celebrities from the 30s and 40s and so on. So somehow he got my name as the Laurel. Oh, I was editor of Intertent Journal at the time. So he called me to interview me about the resting places of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. And they're in two separate cemeteries. People are shocked. Why aren't they buried next to each other? It's like, they weren't married. We're separate people, and they're just in two different cemeteries. So Oliver Hardy is buried in North Hollywood. And so I talked about where they were and that they're not next to each other. And Stan is right near Buster Keaton. And I talked about, he said, well, how often do you go to these grave sites? I said, oh, mostly when people come from out of town and they've never been there. And so I play tour guide and I drive them around to the grave sites. So a couple weeks later, this article comes out, and one of my dear Sons of the Desert friends were Lois Laurel Hawes, Stan's daughter Lois, and her husband, Tony Hawes. And so Tony calls me, and at the time, I didn't get the LA Times. I got a different paper. So he calls me the morning of the article. He says, so I'm reading this article that you're quoted in on the grave sites of the stars. You want to hear what it says? Oh, sure. So he says, Greene will often visit Oliver Hardy's gravesite on the weekends, dressed in his bowler hat and twiddling his tie. He will tip his derby and, speaking to the headstone, say, hello, Ollie. And so I laughed. I said, sure, Tony. Very funny. He's like, Rick, that's what it says. I'm like, what? It makes me sound like a lunatic. I didn't say that. I was in shock. I was livid. I ran out and bought the paper. Sure enough, this LA Times writer made up the whole thing, made me sound like a screwball who dresses like Oliver Hardy and twiddles his tie talking to gravestones. Oh.
Yeah, sometimes I think there are some, not all, of course, but some journalists, they have like a very specific thing they're looking for. You know, I do the tours at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and I've been there for a long time. And I had this journalist once asked to see my apartment, and I kept saying no. And he would not let the issue go. And I finally said, okay, fine. And he showed up and he looked around and he goes, oh, it's clean. And it's nice. I think he thought, okay, she lives in total squalor with like rats and filth and sleeps in a coffin. I think
looks
he
like
had
the
it in his
Addams
head what I
family.
was. And then when he found out it wasn't true, he just didn't know what to think at all. But I actually, a few years ago, I don't know if you were on this tour, but Bob Satterfield arranged for me to give my cemetery tour to the Laurel and Hardy convention. And while Laurel and Hardy aren't at Hollywood Forever, a ton of character actors who worked with them are. And I did a huge tour, which Bob helped me with. And it was great. And what really touched me about giving that tour was there were Laurel and Hardy fans from all over the globe who flew in just for that convention. And I was just like floored that they did that, you know? I mean, it really shows the power of their comedy and of their appeal, you know?
Well, the Sons of the Desert has been in existence since 1965. Um, it it had John McCabe, who founded our group, was friends with both Stan and Oliver Hardy. He wrote the book Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy, the very first book on Laurel and Hardy, and he founded this organization. Stan's passing in 1965 is what inspired him to finally get this thing off the ground. So since then, there are a couple of hundred tents, chapters all over the world. I'll say maybe slightly more than half of them are here in the US. The rest, they're everywhere, all over the globe. South America, Europe, there's several in England, one in Spain. They're just everywhere. There was a tent in Connecticut at a men's prison, and it was called the Pardon Us tent, which is the name of their first film, but it also it ties right into where those gentlemen were incarcerated. So they would have monthly meetings, run Laurel and Hardy films, and then march back to their cells.
You know, what do you think is the secret to that appeal? Because I know some comedy doesn't translate as well overseas or in other cultures or in other eras. Like maybe what makes people laugh in the 30s is not so much in the 50s or 70s or 80s or now. Like, what about Laurel and Hardy's comedy do you think makes it so timeless and so appealing across generations and cultures?
Timeless is the perfect word for it, because they began in silent films as visual comedians, uh, and then transitioned into sound with great voices that fit their characters, but much of their comedy continued to be visual. The big sight gags and sound enhanced the comedy. It didn't create the comedy. Can you imagine seeing a silent Marx Brothers film? Or it wouldn't work. W.C. Fields made plenty of silent films, but he wasn't a hit until he had the sound. Laurel and Hardy created a silent world of incredible visual comedy, some of the funniest sight gags ever committed to film. But it's that warmth, that special bond that the two characters had, which in real life they developed into best friends themselves, as depicted in the film Stan and Babe from a year or so ago.
I like
And
that film. I thought it was really well done.
um, I I agree. The two actors are incredible. When that film ended, I felt like I just spent an hour and a half with Laurel and Hardy. They were that good. All that said, they made up a few things for dramatic purposes that never happened, that bother me as not just a fan or aficionado, but as someone who wants the truth portrayed. So there's that one scene where they're having a little spat in public, which never would have happened. And Stan throws a roll and hits Oliver in the back of the head with a dinner roll. That never happened. If Stan Laurel could have come from the grave and watched that scene, he would have been mortified at that invention. But it tells, a dramatic story, and in reality, it wasn't all that dramatic. So they have to create conflict, I guess. But yes, I agree. In overall, it's a love letter to those two gentlemen, and they did a very good job.
I was conflicted too about these movies because on one hand, I feel like if I don't watch them, a lot of people are going to ask me, "What'd you think of this movie?" And they know how much I love this stuff. But then when you're as close to the material emotionally, intellectually, and you've read it, watched the movies, when you know it so well, and then you see it misrepresented in any way, it's just like fingernails on a chalkboard of your brain. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of these, believe it or not, I have not been able to watch just because I feel like I can't go there now. So those are really slippery slopes, I think, for a lot of us. My hope in them, whenever I see these come out, I think, okay, I got to brace myself. I know there's going to be some stuff that didn't happen. It's not right. But my hope is always that they will serve as some sort of gateway drug. And somebody somewhere will go, that was interesting. I want to see what their films were like in real life, and then watch them. And I feel like if those accomplish that purpose,
then so be it. Yep. And I'm positive people seeing that Stan and Ollie film who didn't know their work would be motivated to seek out the original vintage black and white films and discover something quite special.
Yes. Absolutely. So I've been to the Oliver Hardy Museum in Harlem, Georgia. My family lives in Georgia, so we did a road trip there one Christmas, and that was really fun. We had such a good time looking at the memorabilia. We watched some movies in the screening room that they had, and it was such a treat to get to see his hometown.
Yes, and there's also a Laurel and Hardy Museum in Ulverston, England, which is Stan Laurel's hometown.
That's
so
on my bucket
both
list.
of them. It's when I was there, which was decades ago, it's now much larger and in a more, I guess, permanent facility than what I had seen. But boy, it was a charming place, packed floor to ceiling with memorabilia, founded by a man named Bill Cuban, who was one of the key sons of the deserts of England. He was the mayor of Ulverston for many, many years. And we've lost Bill. So many of these amazing people like John McCabe, who I've mentioned several times, are gone now. But there's a lot of us left carrying on, keeping the films of Laurel and Hardy in public view. They're on TV sometimes. They're on TV all month this month, as we know, on TCM. And they're running incredible films. It's not the junk or the compilation films. They're running silent shorts, sound shorts, all their best features, and a few of the later ones too. Like this poster behind me, Nothing But Trouble. It's a beautiful MGM poster. I have it up because of Babe wearing the chef's hat. It ties right into why we're even here. But boy, it's one of their worst films. But it's a nice poster, and thematically, it's perfect. Behind me on the other side is the original, oh, there's a little bit of glare in it, but the original Saps at Sea one sheet. So the other tent I was Grand Chic of, Saps at Sea of San Diego, this was their last Hal Roach produced feature, and it came out in 1940. And after 1940, they left Roach and they made films that were just nowhere near as good as the Roach films were. So yeah, I have posters and material from those films, but it's their 1930s work that captivates and that viewers should seek out, especially because it's on TCM all month long.
And given the holiday season, and again, given what a hard year this has been for all of us, if you can get on Zoom and maybe watch it over Zoom or something with your friends, or if you have a family you are quarantining with, if you can all kind of make it a night, and make some food and go in the living room and watch these together. It's just, again, it's so fun feeding off the energy of other people laughing at this stuff. And to me, there's just no greater joy than sharing film with others. It's just,
and this month seems to be the month for Babes in Toyland. It actually seems to take place in July, but people consider it to be a Christmas movie because Santa Claus is in it, and he's the one that places the order for the wooden soldiers. Here's an original still from my collection of Laurel and Hardy in costume for Babes in Toyland. And when I bought this still in the 1970s from a dealer in Cleveland, pasted on the back, take a look at this, is this article, Laurel and Hardy part as a team. They broke up. So whoever owned this still in 1934 pasted this out of the newspaper. This is dated March 16th, 1935. And I got a little bonus with my Babes in Toyland still.
Excellent. What are some other pieces of memorabilia or things you have from your collection you can share?
I have a bunch of cool stuff. Here are, if you remember Big Little books, here are two Big Little books from the 1930s. They did a Laurel and Hardy book and an Our Gang book in 1934. These are original hardback Big Little books. And then I'll hold up a few lobby cards. Theaters back then, now you go to a movie and there's a one sheet and that's it. Back then, there were lobby cards, 3 sheets, 6 sheets, standees. They really sold films with hullabaloo. So my oldest Laurel and Hardy lobby card is this one from Pack Up Your Troubles. This is 1932. It was their second starring feature.
Very cool.
And I have one from Bonnie Scotland. This is from 1935. The gentleman with them is William Janney. He was a frequent guest at Way Out West meetings in the 1980s.
I love the color on these old lobby cards and one sheets. They just fantastic,
so vivid,
rich color.
Next is from The Bohemian Girl, which is a 1936 feature. And this was after they made their last short subjects in 1935. So from 1936 on, they only appeared in features. And this was one of the first from that string, The Bohemian Girl. Darla Hood was loaned out from the Our Gang to play in The Bohemian Girl. And then the last one that I pulled is the title card from Saps at Sea, 1940, in spectacular condition, released by United Artists.
That looks mint condition to me.
It really is. And then I have a few other things to show. One I held up on our little preview that we taped the other night. So here is that piece of Hal Roach Studios stationery from the year 1932. It's an unused piece of stationery. You can see the kind of Art Deco logo and then the wonderful caricatures along the sides. There's Laurel and Hardy, there's Zazu Pitts and Thelma Todd, there's Charlie Chase, the Taxi Boys, trying to get the glare off, was another series. And then all along the bottom, there's the Our Gang kids, and you see Spanky kind of next to Petey there. That was when Spanky was very young, his first year being in the gang. So that's a very cool piece in my collection. But my absolute favorite piece of Laurel and Hardy memorabilia, beyond the one sheets and lobby cards, is this. It's a check that Stan Laurel wrote in 1930 to the director James Parrott. He directed many of their very best sound shorts. And he's Charlie Chase's brother. Charlie Chase's real last name is Parrott. So the Parrott brothers worked at the Roach Studios, and there's Stan's autograph. This was given to me by Stan Laurel's daughter, Lois, and Tony Hawes, her husband, and I just cherish it. It's many people have lots of Laurel and Hardy autographs. This is my only Stan Laurel autograph, so means a lot.
Oh yeah, that's very, very cool.
And I have a few stills and things that we can go through as we continue talking. I did want to mention very briefly that we have our 23rd International Convention coming up in 2 years in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. And there was every other year there's an international Sons of the Desert convention where 400 or 500 of us gather from all over the world, and we watch films and we do a parade of tents, and there's a trivia contest. I'm one of the quiz masters for the trivia quiz. So if any of your viewers are interested in attending this New Mexico convention, which will be held in August of 2022, they can reach out to me through you, and I'll get them all the information about this upcoming convention. And then I would be remiss if I didn't once again talk about my book, Henry Brandon, King of the Bogeymen. It's available on Amazon, written with my partner, Bill Cassera, who also has written books on Edgar Kennedy, on Ted Healy, who founded the Stooges. And he just came out with a kind of autobiographical book about his adventures as a cop in Monterey, interacting with Doris Day and Clint Eastwood. It's called Hollywood in Monterey. But we wrote this book 2 years ago. And Henry Brandon, his first professional job in film was playing Barnaby in the Laurel and Hardy feature Babes in Toyland. And from there, he had a very long career well into the 1980s. He was in over 100 feature films, including The Searchers with John Wayne. He played Fu Manchu in the Drums of Fu Manchu Republic serial. And he was in over 100 television shows. So we cover it all in this book. If you're interested in Henry Brandon, check out the reviews, and you can pick it up on Amazon, or Bear Manor Media is the publisher. You can get it direct from Bear Manor.
Do independent bookstores have this book too?
Absolutely, in their movie section.
Because anytime I can support Larry Edmonds and other independent bookstores in your community, I always try to encourage that as much as possible.
I went to Larry Edmonds when I was writing the book to see what Henry Brandon stills they had in their files. And I told them at the time, I'm writing this book on Brandon. I hope you guys will carry it. They do. So they brought me their little file, and there was 8 or 10 stills in there. I said, I'll take them. He said, all of them? I thought, I want them all. He's like, wow, that never happens. So I made his day spending a few $100 on some really great stills. Then they're all in the book.
Great. Excellent. What are those Laurel and Hardy figures on the back near the Saps at Sea poster?
Yes, there are. In fact, let me get one pair. These came out in the 1950s, and they're salt and pepper shakers. And Stan Laurel had a set. Doesn't that tie right in with Hollywood Kitchen? And I won these in an auction at the previous Laurel and Hardy convention. There were 2 pairs of them, and a friend of mine, Marcia Opal, and I both were bidding on them, and we decided if we win, you'll get that one, I'll get this one, and we did. We both won them. So I'd been after a set of these for years, so I was very excited to win them in that auction.
That is so cool. Love that.
Let's see. I wanted to also mention a couple more plugs, I guess. The best way to watch Laurel and Hardy, other than TCM, is this Blu-ray set that came out earlier this year. I think it came out in June, and it's called Laurel and Hardy, the Definitive Restorations. These are the restorations that UCLA has been working on for years. They look better than you've ever seen them. Original titles, missing sequences put back in, and very, very important, the home video premiere of Battle of the Century, another food-related film, which was a lost film for many years, other than the 3-minute pie fight sequence. Then they found the first reel, and then they found most of the second reel. There's about a minute still missing, but it's mostly there, and it's on this incredible collection that doesn't only have the best shorts and features that Laurel and Hardy created for the Hal Roach Studios, but it is loaded with so many bonus features, stills, posters, scripts from the incredible collections of Richard W. Bann and Randy Skretfet. And I will, mentioning Randy Skretfet, he wrote that book that you've got right there. But the more recent edition of that book, and it's heavier too,
Oh, wow. I need to
is
get that.
this. You must get this book. It is the work on the films of Laurel and Hardy, and it's called Laurel and Hardy, The Magic Behind the Movies. It's on Amazon, but there aren't that many hardcover copies left. So this is an amazing book loaded with 1,000 rare photographs. So I wanted to make sure to point that out as the definitive in-print resource on the careers of Stan and Babe.
Well, I think if you've got a Laurel and Hardy lover in your life, we have given out a plethora of fabulous Christmas shopping ideas today.
We have a plethora.
Plethora. We don't get to use that word very often, so it's fun to use.
I loved hearing it.
I tell you what, why don't we go on Facebook and see if people are asking questions? And
Sure.
I'm sure you're going to want to answer them. So let me see what people are saying. Let's see. Give me a sec. All right, we've got 72 comments going on.
Oh, wow.
Oh, someone's pointing out that the Sons of the Desert Convention, August 4th through 8th, 2021 in Providence, Rhode Island. And they're posting the link to that. Okay. Those salt and pepper shakers. People are loving the salt and pepper shakers. And,
awesome.
Yes, Benjamin loved seeing Jean Harlow and Double Whoopee with Laurel and Hardy.
She was also in a short called Bacon Grabbers. So she made several silent film appearances with Laurel and Hardy before rising to superstardom.
Yes. Monique is saying in 2008, Sons of the Desert Convention was in the Netherlands, and she saw a movie with them and met Cassidy Cook and Jean Darling. The photos are still on her wall. There was also a Laurel and Hardy. They were so real. Any idea of their names?
Well, Cassidy Cook is Stan Laurel's great-granddaughter. Lois Laurel was her grandmother, and Cassidy took care of Lois in her later years. It was a beautiful relationship, and Cassidy is Laurel and Hardy or Sons of the Desert royalty as far as we're concerned. I don't know who the lookalikes were that were at that convention, but there are some really great ones out there. The most famous were Chuck McCann and Jim McGeorge, who played Laurel and Hardy in many commercials in the 70s and 80s. They did print ads for Arby's as Laurel and Hardy, wiper blades, Amco, or one of those wiper, all kinds of wonderful recreations of Laurel and Hardy bits and routines, and they looked great. Jim McGeorge is still with us and comes on occasion to Way Out West meetings and just sits on a stool and tells jokes for 20 minutes. The guy's hilarious. We lost Chuck McCann, I think it was about 1.5 years ago.
Lisa Valentine is saying, does Rick have any more Henry Brandon memorabilia?
Well, Lisa knows that I do because she's the one that inspired Bill and I to write the Henry Brandon book. I have dozens of one sheets. I have a big stack of stills from Henry's films. when I was the editor of the Entertainment Journal in the 80s, I got to interact with all our gang and Laurel and Hardy celebrities who were still around, because I was writing articles on them or I was borrowing stills from them. So I went to Henry Brandon's home several times in Hollywood, and he had this big box of his memorabilia, all his stuff just thrown into this box. He's like, yeah, take whatever you want. And I remember going through this box, and I was amazed. It wasn't just stuff from the 30s. It was stuff from 2 weeks earlier. His whole career just not organized. But I remember going through the whole box and pulling out this and that and thinking, I wish I had a box of Henry Brandon like this. Never thinking I'd write a book on him. Well, since working on the book and then getting it published, I'm still collecting Henry Brandon memorabilia, lobby cards, stills, posters, and I'm going to donate all of it to the UCLA Film and Television Archives as a Henry Brandon collection. So it's there in perpetuity, with a copy of the book, of course. So I have quite a lot of Brandon, but we can do Henry Brandon another time. This is a Laurel and Hardy event.
True. Danny Miller is saying, I know Dick Van Dyke was and is obsessed with Stan Laurel. Did he ever end up playing Laurel in anything? I have some vague memory of him doing that on a TV special.
Absolutely. He was very good friends with Stan Laurel in the early 1960s. Stan lived in Santa Monica, and Danny Kaye, Jerry Lewis, Dick Van Dyke, they visited their idol, Stan Laurel. So Dick Van Dyke played Laurel with Henry, I forgot his name, Cavill, in an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he was very nervous for Stan to see it. And so it was on the night, and he called Stan the next morning. Did you see it? And Stan's like, it was lovely, lad, very lovely, but here's what you did wrong. And he listed 6 things. You should have done this, and I never do that. And this, I mean, he was not to be mean, but to be critical. This, if you do it again, this is what you need to do so that it's better. And Dick Van Dyke was, wow, what a perfectionist. He wasn't offended at all. It's Stan Laurel. So that's kind of a funny story. Bob Satterfield has invited Dick Van Dyke to Way Out West tent many times, and we've never had him, but we still have hope. He's a busy guy, though.
Oh, absolutely. Are any of their children in the business? I think that was by Ruth Munsack. And Stan's the only one that had kids, right?
Correct. Oliver Hardy had no children. Stan Laurel had 1 daughter. That's it. No, Lois was not in the business, and Lois's children were not in the business. Lois married a guy, Rand Brooks, her first husband, who was an actor, was in the business. In fact, I think he was in Gone with the Wind. But no, I've worked with Lois and Tony, and then in more recent years with Cassidy on some of the memorabilia and merchandise. I'm in the promotional products industry, my day job, with Halo branded solutions. So I would help them do t-shirts and coffee mugs and things with Laurel and Hardy logos. But that's as close as they came to being in the industry is the merch.
All right, and Danny Miller's saying, wasn't Rand Brooks Charles Hamilton in Gone with the Wind?
Wasn't Rand Brooks?
Charles Hamilton in Gone with the Wind.
Yes, he had a name part in Gone with the Wind with lines. I think that's who that was. Yeah.
But okay, I think that's more or less it for the questions. But of course, you can always go on the Facebook post and answer any questions that anybody else has.
I'd be happy to.
So thank thank you so much for being my guest today. This has been such a treat. And I want to do, again, a huge shout out to you, Rick Greene, for being my guest today, for Robert Satterfield for referring me to you, for the great Daryl Rooney, and the amazing Marnie Rafter for gifting me this incredible book. So any final thoughts on Laurel and Hardy and final recommendations for people to watch out for this month on TCM?
Well, I did print out the TCM schedule. It begins tomorrow, Monday, December 7th, and it's like just after midnight, and it's all day long into the wee hours of the next morning. So it's every Monday, except for the Christmas weekend. So Monday, December 7th, Monday, December 14th, and Monday, December 28th are the three big blocks of Laurel and Hardy films. The ones tomorrow are all the silent films and the transitional films into sound. They're all wonderful. And then some of the best features, Sons of the Desert, which is my favorite Laurel and Hardy feature, is tomorrow at 9:30 p.m., which I'm guessing is Eastern time. Then Pack Up Your Troubles, which is their second feature. Then Babes in Toyland. You don't want to miss that. Then in a week, on Monday, December 14th, they pick up again with Sound 2 and 3 reelers, and then another block of features, which includes Way Out West, possibly their most famous feature, Blockheads, another great one, Swiss Miss, and then finally on December 28th, it begins with the Golden Age of Comedy, that Robert Youngson compilation film where they used the pie fight sequence from Battle of the Century. And then again, a whole wealth of these wonderful two-reelers, Toad in a Hole, Me and My Pal, Busybodies, Dirty Work. These are their best sound two-reelers. They're amazing. But as they get to the end on this last day, there's a film called That's That from 1937. Incredibly rare. It's an outtake reel that Bert Jordan, the editor, put together for Stan Laurel at a birthday party, and it wasn't meant to be seen by the public. It survived all the decades. It's on this Blu-ray collection for the very first time, and they're running it for the very first time as on the third day of these 3 days. So you literally can't go wrong, except at the very end of the last day, they're showing nothing but trouble. You want to avoid that one.
Well, thank you so much for being my special guest today. This was a delight. And is there any website you recommend going for people who want to know around the world about Laurel and Hardy conventions, Laurel and Hardy updates?
There are many websites that the individual tents have. My tent, Way Out West Tent, has a website, wayoutwesttent.org. But there's a great Laurel and Hardy site run by a guy named Dave Lord Heath out of England. And it is all about the Hal Roach Studios. That's a great place to go for not just the Laurel and Hardy films, but Charlie Chase, the Our Gang films. And he has rare posters, rare frame blow-ups. I sent him everything that I have. It's all on his site. It's a great resource. And I can't think exactly what the address is, but it's the Hal Roach Studios website run by Dave Lord Heath.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And this was just a wonderful way to kick off the Christmas season and the Christmas episodes of Hollywood Kitchen. And I think we can all agree that Laurel and Hardy are the gift that will never, ever stop giving.
That's for sure.
Well, Merry Christmas, Rick. Merry Christmas to all of you watching. Stay tuned for more food, more fun, more special guests coming soon in Hollywood Kitchen.
Goodbye.